I'm Rhonda Phillips, Dean of the Honors College, and welcome. We're glad you're here with us today. And please plan to stay for the reception that immediately follows the presentation and the lecture. And also, I want to invite you to take a moment and look at several of our students' work that is out in the Innovation Forum, which is in the atrium that you came in. Let me just give a quick shout out to our students. Zach Hellman is exhibiting prototype pieces of a team-built installation that won a Sculpture Objects Functional Art and Design Award last year in Chicago. Dr. Pete Moore and the Printers Guild have installed their scale model of a Gutenberg press built in one of his classes last year. And then there's the Honors College Grand Prix team has brought in their car, last year's design, I believe, and thanks to Bailey Skidmore for making that possible. There's also some posters from last year's Dawn or Doom conference that visualize the Society Tech connection from another angle. So do take a moment and look at those as well. And what a way to celebrate our very first lecture with Dr. Moira Gunn, Purdue alumna and host of Tech Nation and Biotech Nation, but I'm not going to give away too much because Dr. Patrick Wolf will introduce her in a moment. And there are several others here tonight that will help me host this event, and that's Dr. Arthur Aronson, whom I will introduce in a moment. And as I mentioned, Dr. Patrick Wolf, Dean of College of Science, and then Dr. Arvind Raman. He's Associate Dean for Global Engineering Programs and a Professor in Mechanical Engineering who will moderate our Q&A session. So now it gives me great pleasure to welcome Dr. Arthur Aronson, founder of our series. And we want to take a moment and just thank him so much for the generous endowment that helped us establish this series. And that gift will continue to give to our students, our staff, our faculty for many years to come. And I would also like to share just a little bit about Dr. Aronson. He is pretty amazing. He is, has been a professor at Purdue since 1960. He served as a National Foundation Fellow at Cambridge. He's a member of the American Association for the Advancement of Sciences, and also I noticed a Phi Kappa Phi member, which we just reinvigorated that chapter here at Purdue, an honorary national society. His list of accomplishments go on and on. He is just a tremendous person and has accomplished so many things, and by having this ability to have a lecture series where once a year we can come together and explore that intersection of science and society, he has left a legacy that will give for many years to come. And hopefully we can look forward to reconvening every year about this time. And I would like to welcome him to the stage and for a few remarks before we kick off with our speakers. So Dr. Aronson, if you want to come to the stage.
Thank you, Dr. Phillips. So the Aronson family consists of me, my son, who was a student here. He met his wife here, so my daughter-in-law was a student here. And their two sons were students here. One graduated last year from the Honors College. The other son will be graduating in electrical engineering this May. So in addition to that family, on my wife's side, there's a very extended family. She's from a very large family, and a number of them have attended Purdue University. So I thought it was appropriate to honor them, since they all had a very positive experience at Purdue, and to set up this lecture series so that we can all become better informed citizens, and as a result, contribute better to our democracy. So it's a great pleasure to have initiated this series and to have Dr. Nunn as a speaker. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And now it's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Patrick Wolf, our Dean of Purdue's College of Science. But let me tell you a bit about him before he comes up to the stage. He is our newest dean, and he's a specialist in mathematical foundations of data science. He was also what just struck me when I first met him is he quickly told me that he was an honors college student as an undergraduate. So there's a lot of good connection there. So I encourage all of our students here to take a moment and try to get to know him a little better. his list of accomplishments are extraordinary. He was at the University of Cambridge as a National Science Foundation Graduate Research Fellow. He later went back to the UK at the University of Cambridge. He was at Harvard University as an assistant professor, and he also was at University College London as a professor of statistics, and also was involved with the Alan Turing Institute, which I'm sure the science among us will recognize that name. It's a $100 million National Institute for Data Science. So we couldn't be more proud to have him here at Purdue joining us, especially given his deep interest in sciences, but also his connection to honors, of course. So let's welcome him to the stage, and he is going to introduce our keynote speaker. Thank you.
Thank you, Rhonda, for that very kind introduction, and thanks to everyone who's here this afternoon. It's so wonderful to see a completely full house in the brand new Honors College building, which, as Moira and I were discussing last night, wasn't built, I think, the last time you were here on campus. I'll say just a quick word about the Honors College itself, and then also about Dr. Aronson, who we're very proud to claim as one of our own emeritus faculty in biological sciences. The Honors College is growing at an incredible rate here at Purdue. This year alone, we had something like 10 times as many applications as spots in the college, and Rhonda's been doing an incredible job sort of making this all happen. So I couldn't think of a better reason for Arthur, for you to celebrate your families and children's accomplishments through this gift to the Honors College. And frankly, I couldn't think of a more important topic than to endow a lecture series that talks about the importance of technology, and very specifically its role in society. So I can't wait to see what our next set of speakers look like in the series. But that's to take absolutely nothing away, of course, from Moira. So Moira's achievements are nothing short of astounding. She is, of course, Dr. Moira Gunn. She is an alum both of the Department of Computer Science at Purdue, where she received her master's degree, and even more famously or infamously from the Department of Mechanical Engineering, where she was the first female recipient of a PhD. Now that, I think, is a very amazing achievement. She talked to us last night over dinner about the flip side of that challenge, which it was another 17 years, I think, before another female student graduated from mechanical. So we've made a great deal of progress since then, but in the mid-1970s, that scale of progress did not come particularly as quickly as many of us would have liked. Moira has had a fascinating career. She's currently best known as the host of Tech Nation and what is now to be called Tech Nation Health, sort of focusing on biotech and its impact on our lives. But prior to that, she had a long and stellar career as a robotics engineer. She was telling us over dinner about how she started out in mathematics, went through computer science, felt that it was very theoretical, and she was interested in something slightly more practical. She wound up in computer-aided design within mechanical engineering in the 1970s, and we were having a good laugh about how the lyrics might have changed, but the tune is much the same in computer-aided design. She had a career which took her across many industry sectors, from places like not only NASA, but IBM, Martin Thiokol, United Technologies, Pratt & Whitney, Lockheed Martin, Rolls-Royce, and the U.S. Navy. So that is that's nothing short of amazing. And as she was telling us earlier, in her time teaching, which is something she does now on the West Coast, she managed to take her students to the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office and show them some of her patents and trademarks. So once again, an outstanding set of achievements. I don't think I need to say too much more about Tech Nation. You will all have heard it on NPR and its various affiliates. great. And we're approaching, or Moira's approaching her 4,000th interview. So I think that is probably worth, in particular, a round of applause. I couldn't begin to name the most important and interesting amongst the set of guests, but you know, it includes all the people you would hope, everybody from Larry Page and Sergey Brin through to Crick and Watson, famous figures in science, politics, society, and the world at large. So the very last thing I'll say before turning the stage over to Moira is just a tiny bit about her lecture topic. Now more than ever, our understanding of the arc of media and the future of truth, which is the topic of this evening's lecture, is outstandingly important. The speed at which technology has brought new forms of media, new methods of communication, and new means of influence and persuasion means that a deep understanding of how technology intersects with society, in particular how technology and media and the notion of truth kind of come together, is very, very important. And this has one other sort of healthy side benefit for all of us here at Purdue as we get ready to launch our larger sort of university-wide initiative in all things big data, data science, and artificial intelligence. We too across campus will be grappling with some of the intersection of these types of technologies and their impact on our citizenry and civil society. So let me say no more and leave Moira to entertain you prior to our reception. I'm sure she's going to be nothing short of a fantastic speaker for the evening, and thank you very much and welcome.
Thank you. Yes, no pressure. I want to thank all of you for inviting me, and thank Dean Rhonda Phillips here, her deans and her staff. It's a great honor to give the inaugural lecture of the Aronson Family Science and Society Lecture Series here at Purdue Honors College, which I have not been at before. A number of you have come up and said, oh, I've listened to you for years, or I've been listening to your podcast lately because you were coming. And I always think there's nothing like, you know, you hear it on the radio, through the dashboard of your car, through your earbuds, from your smartphones, and so you should hear the open to the show in person. From San Francisco, I'm Moira Gunn, and this is Tech Nation. I was politely asked for a title and a description to my talk, and for those politely asking me, they know I didn't answer right away. I was asked myself, what bothers me today? What am I trying to figure out? What have we collectively not figured out yet? And certainly a hallmark of Purdue has always been innovation. And not just for innovation's sake, but rather we're implored to solve the problem. That's the engineering way. No one challenged you as students here, as faculty here, to memorize more than anyone else. No one demanded that you write more words than anyone else, suggested that you watch the clock to measure your performance. So it's not a surprise that the students at this honors college are asked to be more than memorizers, repeaters, and busy bees. They've been chosen and brought together to do more, to be more, now and in the future. Now, as then, what is it we're asked to do? As in real life, before a task is defined, it's characterized. Find the leading edge, find the challenge, find that which stumps scientists, stops engineers, and baffles society. Here you will find where your work is. And here is where I found what I will be talking about today. In truth, I want to thank the Aronson family and the Honors College. It pushed me to put into words a subject that has been bothering me, and I suspect has been bothering a lot of people. And I must say the title just came to me. The old engineers at Purdue, they'd walk around with their hands in their pockets and kind of look over you, and and you're just like, didn't know what to do, but they'd talk to you. They said, put the problem in your mind at night And the next morning, you will either have it solved or you will have made progress. Perhaps you posed the problem incorrectly. Perhaps you had an improper assumption. I remember when I was here, we had a huge flatbed printer, 4 feet by 4 feet. We were very excited, only one on campus. At the time, it was quite amazing. And I was making what would be considered primitive graphics today. But we were first just officially saying for the first time, women in engineering. You know, woman in engineering doesn't quite have a ring to it. I had my own little club going, you know, and just didn't make it. But there just was this first time we started to have women. So I was creating a poster on the flatbed of this plotter of a fleeting, uncatchable running woman. Our image for the female engineer, the woman in engineering. I had to submit a big matrix of points to draw this fleeting, uncatchable woman, but there was something that pulled the picture askew. It just would not come out right. And I looked and looked at the data, and I couldn't find it, and finally I gave up and went to bed. Waking in the morning, I had this visual. It was as if I was looking at a spreadsheet today. Those were over in finance at the time. Now we all have them. And I saw this spreadsheet with a list of numbers, and in one part I saw one number. And it was in bold with a circle around and then an arrow. And I shook myself awake and I dressed as fast as I could and I hot-footed it into the lab. I brought up the data and went to exactly the place I had dreamt up, and there it was. One bad number. So I made the fix, and the fix was in, and there was a beautiful plot. So the old engineers were right. Put it in your mind at night, and you'll wake up with a solution. So a few weeks ago, being bothered by the fact that I did not tell anyone what I was going to talk about, but I had my airline tickets, I woke up in the morning and I had a name about what bothered me. And the name for the talk, The Arc of Media, the Future of Truth. At its core, we have to remember that we are humans. And this is both good and bad. This is our challenge. To recognize when we're good at things. The old engineers knew our brains kept working when we slept. And when we are not, we must pay attention to when human frailty exposes us to harm. This is the story of what science knows about humans, about how technology affects humans, and about the human drive for truth. It is a story of the media, how it has evolved and been driven by technology. And it is a story about creating our future individually and collectively. There is some discussion as to who were the first members of the media, and it doesn't matter much, but I like the vision of the town crier. Hear ye, 17th century English villages, London, perhaps Westminster with its winding, crowded paths. 8 o'clock and all is well. 10 o'clock and Mrs. Flodgett had a baby girl. The people listening in those villages in the ramshackle city of early London, they depended upon the town crier to tell the time, to get rudimentary news, and to get it right. Get it wrong, and you were out. People needed the truth, and yet the truth was mediated through the town crier. He was the filter, the guardian of the truth. So this kind of mediation, today we call the media, this demand for accuracy fused in the people's minds the impression, the desire that the media was there to deliver information and to deliver the truth. But as technology developed, as the printing press came into wider distribution, the broadsheet could be printed, and many broadsheets were available with both facts and opinion, and in no time at all there was a marinade of bias. So we humans want the truth. We ask for information, and when there is information, there is bias. So it's always challenging to get the truth, and that is our first lesson. Media does not drive truth. Media drives perception in the past, today, and in the future. Now, I grew up at a time when if Sister said it, it was true. If Walter Cronkite said it, it was true. And if the President of the United States said it, it was true. Truth was not only valued, it was thought to be attainable all around us. By the time I came to Purdue, there were 3 national television networks and a local Lafayette network. I remember the local station for 2 things. the interminable qualifiers for the Indy 500, and high school basketball. There is no end to the number of high schools in Indiana or their basketball games. They go on forever. But that was all the TV we had, and it was not 24/7. At the end of the broadcast night, perhaps 11 p.m., the American flag would come on and the stations would sign off with the national anthem. Cut to test pattern, familiar buzz. And there was no way to record it. Those 3 networks, we'll say 4, you had better be there if you want to watch something, which was why people went home and watched the 6 o'clock news. That's how you got your news of the day. But no, those programs had editorial policy. They had fact checkers, and they had time. There were only a few news programs on a few channels for a few hours each day. In retrospect, time was compressing for news even then. Washington Post reporter, journalist Ben Bagdikian, famous for his part in releasing the Pentagon Papers, told a story on Technation about how he had been a member of the White House press corps many years ago. President Kennedy decided, let's bring in television cameras. That's routine, of course, today, but it was new. Nobody really thought about it. Sure, bring them in, put them in the back. And the White House spokesperson came out, as they do today. The journalists would write it all down in shorthand yet, like mad. And then they would run down en masse at the end to a bank of telephones at the end of the hall. You would dictate your story over the phone, you wrote it on the fly, and quoting your notes, they would go directly into the newspaper about to be run. But the day the television cameras were brought in, the same routine happened. The entire White House press corps stood up and ran down the hallway, and suddenly they stopped. The newsrooms already had the story. Darn that technology. So today we still have a White House press room, but now we have 24-hour news channels, and multiple ones at that. And all media outlets, even newspapers, have information being published on the internet on the spot. So the volume of information has exploded. In addition, and dangerously with respect to the truth, there is a blurring of lines between information and opinion. I'm constantly saying, wait a minute, is that your opinion, or did you just tell me a fact? And who is reporting the information has changed. Traditional mainstream journalists continue to follow editorial policy. You know the drill: 2 unrelated sources, fact checkers, editorial oversight of content, opinion clearly identified as opinion. That's that op-ed page. Those policies translate whenever the media outlet appears online, whether it's the New York Times or NPR. You can find all of their editorial policies online today. But the great majority of social media-only publications do not have editorial policy. Most can't afford fact checkers, don't know how to verify 2 independent sources, and there is no editorial oversight. Today, traditional mainstream media quotes each other as sources of fact and quotes social media as sources of opinion. Social media quotes mainstream media, and social media when it quotes anything at all. Now we've entered into a time when the great majority of traditional media is being called fake. We have a schism in the media where one television channel selects one set of facts and opinion, and the others another. It's hard to watch both. The facts just don't match up, much less the opinions. So listeners and viewers find what is attractive to their way of thinking, and that's what they watch or listen to. And each insists it's the truth. But the 2 sides of the divide, they can't both be true. The late Senator Daniel Patrick Moynihan is credited with the quote, "Everyone is entitled to his own opinion, but not to his own facts." Well, that's no longer the case. But the constant deluge of misinformation mixed seamlessly with opinion is extremely dangerous for each of us individually and for all of us as a society. I'll return to this thread later and why it is so dangerous. This pithy quote about not being entitled to your own facts, it was in the 1990s it was so popular, but it was the proverbial canary in the coal mine. Well, at the time, we rather laughed. Who could have a different set of facts? But who knew that? Who thought that? Journalists and teachers, scientists and engineers, we are all seized by the truth. We insist on it. It's the ability to do our jobs. Teachers don't ignore a letter in the alphabet because they don't like it or make up a new one. They don't make up their own math. Science itself is the search for truth. Engineers can't rewrite the laws of physics because they're inconvenient. And journalists, real journalists, are compelled to seek the truth and to communicate it as best as they can. My own journey is not atypical in that regard. I often say, by your traits, you often learn to know yourself. In 1999, Edmund Morris wrote the book Dutch, a memoir of Ronald Reagan. Throughout it, he inserted himself as a character, even though he wasn't there. It was highly criticized at the time, but he made all the media rounds promoting the book. I received the book and press materials and was asked if I would interview him, and I didn't even have to think about it. It came out of my mouth. I heard it with everyone else. I can't afford to read that book. I'm liable to take up something he made up and file it in my mind as a fact. I can't do that. We humans do not have tags on our memories about what is fiction and what is fact. Putting in faux facts, much less misinformation, is very dangerous. You might remember them as actual facts, and we know our memories are bad enough as they are. About the same time, the Bill Clinton-Monica Lewinsky scandal raised its head. Kevin Starr had been charged with investigating and compiling a report, the so-called Starr Report. Now, large government reports were printed at one or another government printing office, and the press would then get their copies right away, read them studiously, and write up what they thought was important. But in 1999, the internet had begun to come of age. For the first time ever, it was decided that a government report, the Starr Report, would also be released online and on a set of websites all at the same time. It was historic in the history of the internet and the World Wide Web, and it created the internet's first flash mob, consuming by some estimates 40% of the traffic on the internet worldwide, and then in a few minutes it was all over. I decided I wasn't going to read it. What good would it do me and my listeners? It's not our subject. But the next day I went to a party in Portland, Oregon. It was the talk of the party, and something curious happened. I talked to one person who said the report said such and such. Fascinating. Then the next person, and then person number 3. None of the 3 of these fine people said anything that could possibly exist in the same report, or that would be news. Kevin Starr got all these different, no, it couldn't be. Wait a minute. Something else happened with the Starr Report. That was a first. Newspapers on the Sunday morning printed, it came out on a Friday night. Sunday morning, they printed the entirety of the Starr Report in special sections, tiny print, the entire report. So I went to the airport, bought a newspaper, the New York Times, and read it on the flight back home. I knew exactly what was in the report then, and what wasn't. From then on, I was a bit of a pain. Someone would say something about that, what was in the report, and I'd say, well, no, it doesn't say that. Or it says this, and I'd say, exactly, and I'd confirm it. I wasn't out to make friends. I was out to get my own personal knowledge of the facts straight. I was out for the truth. We never talked about it on Tech Nation. It wasn't relevant. But I needed to know exactly what Kevin Starr had determined to be true. It also is reflected in how I structured Tech Nation. I really feel for science and technology journalists who speak with scientists and engineers and then have to translate what they say for their audiences. They truly are mediating the truth, filtering the facts for their audiences, and they better get it right. I have a simpler task. I find the people with solid credentials and strong records, and I have them tell their own truths, straight from the horse's mouth. Now, writing the commentary 5 minutes has been more challenging. Not only was I writing opinion, mine, and speaking in my own voice, but I personally had to get the facts straight. I wouldn't have done it, but there's a 5-minute news hole that has to be filled. When you listen to when you listen to NPR, you have a 1 minute of Billboard coming up on whatever the next show is, 5 minutes of news, 6 minutes after you start. You don't always take the news, and some stations don't take the news at all. So it's like you had to fill it, or it be replaced. So we're coming up now on 20 years with 5 minutes. I did 5 years without it. And I'm proud to say that all that time I only got one thing wrong, and it was early on. Now you have to be at a certain age to get this reference. It was the early days, but it was egregious. You see, in one commentary, I confused Roseanne, Rosanna, Dana, and Emily Latella. For those of you who are old-time watchers of Saturday Night Live, there are two goofy characters played by Gilda Radner. Lock me up, lock me up. They didn't say that in those days. It was, the blast of email was incredible. We will never donate anything to NPR again. I can't believe you did this. You know, I just stopped reading. I kept reading it. By that measure, it was the most popular show ever, I have to say. But I mean, it was unbelievable how fast and how much came in for getting something as innocuous wrong as the names of two fictional characters. But today we have the internet and social media, and anyone can say anything. We have assertions of fact which aren't true. We have name calling and labeling. We have switches of position to and fro and back again. We have spin and semi-lies and deliberate lies. And we have the pressure of having to produce 24 hours a day of news every day. Every day. We don't get the weekends off. There are constant press conferences and press releases, constant tweets, and unexpected appearances before live cameras. And the media can't wait for the morning paper or the evening news. If the Washington Post is ready to release something, it comes out online in advance of the morning paper. It comes out on the internet whenever it is decided to push publish. So now I ask myself, how do I find the truth? Even when we think we are hearing the truth, we humans can't tell if it's true. And that's where we are. I'm on a mission to make rules for myself to figure out the truth, and I hope it helps you too. I wrote a 5 minutes recently that I'd like to expand on. Don't worry if you've heard it. The actual content part of 5 minutes is just 365 words, about 3 minutes. The rappers and a lot of Dave Brubeck Take 5 music. Thank you, Dave, for not having to write so much. And the commentary was about gaslighting. Now, some of you may remember the famous Ingrid Bergman, Charles Boyer 1944 film Gaslight. It was black and white, almost eerie with fog-bound London of a time when gaslights illuminated the houses. This is actually an engineering story, if you'd like. A fixed amount of gas would come into the house, and it'd be split among the various gaslights which had been turned on. You light fixtures in a single room, and the light would be very bright. Start lighting more and more fixtures around the house, and all the lights equally dim. In the movie, in a nutshell, the Charles Boyer character, this is not the charming Charles Boyer of the film Gigi, this is a really bad Charles Boyer. He wants to keep the Ingrid Bergman character off-kilter, doubting her perceptions and turning to him for what's true and what isn't. He ultimately is looking at her to have her committed to an institution, but in the meantime, he's secretly searching the attic of the house, trying to find some valuables. Whenever he's up there, he lights the gas lights, which she doesn't know, and she tells him the gas lights have been dimming. He tells her, no, you are imagining things. He manufactures other events, and he keeps telling her, no, your perceptions are wrong. You're safe with me, and only I can save you. And he tells her one thing and claims another. Over time, she becomes used to this. She expects to be confused by her perceptions. She depends on him for the truth. Any confusion must certainly be her own. This film, this part of the plot, is what gave birth to the popular term we use today, gaslighting. Lots have been written, and I'd like to point to the easily accessible article in Psychology Today, which says it's a form of persistent manipulation and brainwashing that causes the victim to doubt themselves and to ultimately lose their own perception, identity, and self-worth. But that's not the kicker. The kicker is, it's not only played within personal relationships, it can be played on entire societies. And that's what's happening to us now. It's very simple, 7 identifiable steps. First, lie and exaggerate. Sound familiar? Calling what is the truth fake, labeling someone who is telling the truth deceitful or a liar. Say anything and assert it's true. It can be different from what you said earlier. Doesn't matter. Let me quote myself. There's name calling and pejoratives and what would be embarrassing if it were true accusations. And that's all simply presented as the truth. Our media diet has been a steady stream of misinformation, exaggerations, misdirections, and more. And when they cannot be denied, the response has been to call them hyperbole. What is hyperbole? What's the difference? Well, hyperbole admits you exaggerated, or it's not correct, all right, but the definition says you shouldn't be taken literally. Okay, so when is it exactly true, and when is it hyperbole? Here's the truth. If you can get away with hyperbole, then it becomes the truth. The next step in gaslighting is repetition. Repeat, repeat, repeat. We see it in science. Keep repeating it, it becomes the truth. Then escalate when challenged. You say, I'm not telling the truth, I'm coming at you with more name calling, more accusations, and who knows what. Then wear out the victim. We humans do get tired, and we don't want to get you riled up again. Then look at Ingrid Bergman here. Form a psychological or emotional dependency on the person doing the gaslighting, and then the bona fide gaslighter gives you false hope. Then finally, dominate and control. You must believe on the gaslighter for your own survival. Humans do what they have to do, and we've seen it historically. Remember the Stockholm Syndrome, developing trust or affection for the people who took you hostage? Now we have sheer volume. If you're trying to watch, read, listen to all today's media, your memory bank will become filled with conflicting facts very quickly, and you will wear out. The simplest thing is to pick a channel and stick with it. But then you've committed to the divide. So how do we rise above this psychological bullying? How do we find the truth and keep our balance and our perspective and don't depend on particular people or factions or even media to tell us the truth? First, you must recognize that you're being gaslighted. And by doing so, you play your part in dismantling the gaslighter. So I'm going to teach you how to gaslight. It's the gaslight game. It's fun. The whole family can play. In fact, the whole nation can play. We can all play. You have to know it when it's happening to you. And it's not just lie and exaggerate. It's any form of communication which leaves people confused or unable to clarify the facts or anything that puts them off kilter and with any luck keeps them there. One technique for putting people off guard I'll call jamming. You jam more facts into a short period of time than any person can hear or comprehend or even recall in the moment, much less remember long term. Science tells us that a person can retain 3 or 4 items on the spot. Think about your phone numbers, 3 and 4 number sequences, for a reason. Otherwise, we just type them all out, speak them all out. The idea is to unexpectedly deliver more information than a person can take in. Intentionally, the person saying it knows you can't get it all, knows it may confuse one fact with another, knows you may just give up, and that they know more than you do, or you become anxious or excited or whatever, is a natural resting state, not a natural resting state. You may question your own ability to comprehend, to be up to date on the facts. If you don't recognize it for what it is, you'll become an unwitting target, the person or the audience vulnerable to the jammer's next move. The facts can even be true. It's about throwing your brain into a stunned state. I first noticed it in a speech Bill Clinton gave post-presidency. He was no longer the president. He wouldn't do it as president. It was a paid keynote at the Bio 2010 conference in Chicago, and he was promoting the work of the Clinton Foundation and the importance of making a difference globally. And given who was paying the speaking fee, he managed to work in how biotechnology could fit into that picture. About 98% of the way through an otherwise unremarkable speech, former President Clinton intentionally did a jam. It went something like this. Now I don't do this normally, so I have a hard time. I'm going to do my best here. What kind of world do we want to live in? Well, first we've got to know our world. It's our world today. 3 billion people live on $2 a day, 1 out of 6 on $1. 1 out of 10 have no clean water to drink. 1 out of 4 no electricity. 1 billion are hungry, while malnutrition affects 165 million children, and 1 billion children live in poverty. In sub-Saharan Africa, 700 babies are born each day with HIV, 600 die. 7 out of 10 women in over 20 countries are illiterate, while each year of education causes women's wages to rise 10%. 115 million school-aged children globally are not attending school, and half are boys. Then you swing in for the big finish. Who's ready to take a test on the facts? You know. Remembering that you could only hold 4 things in present memory, you just heard 20 numbers in 30 seconds and 12 composite facts. So know when you're being jammed. If you can all of a sudden you go, ah, you're being jammed. Even if the facts are true. I considered throwing in an incorrect fact or all wrong facts, but I couldn't do it. As a teacher, I just couldn't do it. But people do. I did say it in the middle. I did jam. People can use that to stick things in. So at the other end of the jam is the long jam. This is the feeding of misinformation merged with true information over time. Facts versus untruths asserted as facts versus opinions asserted as facts. It's very Pavlovian, if you will. Is it true? Is it kind of true? Is it false? Mix it up enough and everything has to be tested. It's mind-boggling. There are not enough hours in the day to disassemble all the items, fact-check them, relate them to what's been said earlier and elsewhere, call out any problems, and then to prepare to deal with your analysis after challenging it and being called fake news. But let's look at the volume here. Let's do the numbers on the president's tweets since he's been in office. And let's empathize with the people whose job it is to analyze those tweets. It's all out there on TrumpTwitterArchive.com. As of a few days ago, 400 days in office, an average of 9 tweets a day, every day, so we're approaching a total of 4,000 tweets. They each have to be checked factually, then checked against what he's tweeted before, what other statements he and his representatives have made, documents that have been issued, materials that they reference, government action, speeches, and anything related and relevant. The assignment is to distinguish between facts and non-facts, opinions based on which ones. They can counter something said or written several months ago that seemed innocuous at the time. Suddenly they may stand in contradiction. They may just reinterpret it. It takes time, and before you blink, more tweets are coming. I'm reminded of the story of the British during World War II and their work attempting to decode the Germans' famous Enigma machine, decoding machine. Encryption machine, rather. It's retold in the film The Imitation Game. Every day the Germans would send out encrypted messages, and they would change the code every 24 hours. A team of mathematicians at Bletchley Park, led by Alan Turing Institute, here, built a physical machine to decode the encryption. But it took longer than 24 hours to decode the messages. One day, they realized the Germans were signing messages off with Heil Hitler earlier in the 24-hour period. Wow. That meant they had H-E-I-L-T-N-R. Only 19 letters and 10 digits to go. And with the state of their technology, they were able to decode the messages in less than 24 hours. And in that honeymoon space, between figuring out the day setting for Enigma and the end of the day, the Brits knew what the Germans were saying. This is like chasing down the true and false information in tweets. It takes longer than 24 hours to set the record straight in any 24-hour period. And that's the plan. And that's the 24-hour plus jam. So we have jamming in the moment, the long jam, and the 24-hour plus jam. Jam, sticky jam, cannot be disassembled into its original fruit. But the Turing Enigma story delivers hope. Today, the annual Turing Award is highly prestigious. It is given annually to an individual selected for contributions of lasting and major technical importance to the computer field. Perhaps someone or some group will figure out how to challenge these jams, quickly or at least definitively, perhaps using mathematics and computer science, not policy, politics, regulation, and control. But let's analyze the contents of the tweets, because we kind of miss this. Occasionally we'll hear a tweet of interest from various media, but we don't know the rate of repetition, which is important to understand in the gaslighting framework. The top two subjects come in at nearly 200 tweets apiece. 1, Fox News and Sean Hannity. 2, fake news. We get a lot of attention, fake news. Often this goes hand in hand, these two together. The next popular subject, dropping down to 25 tweets during this presidency, is Russia. Drop again to 110, it's Make America Great Again, a slogan which informed you from the start that we used to be great and we're not great anymore. But don't forget the rules. Give false hope. We will be great again. The next drop down is to 86 tweet. It's about deals, making deals. Clustering in the 70s are the subjects of Hillary Clinton, Obama, and Obamacare, all counted separately, and then down to the 30s for the specific media outlets of CNN, NBC, and the New York Times. At the bottom of anything that could be considered a cluster, coming in at 29 tweets, is the NFL. I don't know how those all come together. Well, we have a chance to cluster them. It's no small feat to dissemble these tweets and remarks and statements and speeches. The sheer volume is unprecedented thanks to today's technology. Let's pick out one tried and true gaslight technique. Say two conflicting things at the same time while not signaling your actual intention. It leaves one position open to reinterpretation or even outright denial at a later time. Case in point, Saturday night, the annual Gridiron Dinner in Washington, D.C., the prestigious club, 130 years old, of the top newspapers and now media outlets. Some 70 individual members. The room was packed with top professional journalists, and President Trump came to give a speech. Let's remember that President Trump has repeatedly called journalists in tweets and speeches the enemy of the American people. And just a few hours before taking the podium, he tweeted, "You, big Y, big O, big U, are being mocked all over the world, mostly because you have not shown leadership, knowledge, or decency. You and your ilk have created the murkiest, stinkiest swamp there ever was in D.C. Your ignorance creates disdain." Well, that's rough. So what happened at the Gridiron Dinner just a few hours later? Not much. It was as if the tweet never happened. The president did indeed make some funny, lighthearted, and even self-deprecating quips, which is the norm at such events. Here's one. He and Melania were a little late because Jared couldn't get through security. That's in keeping with tradition. While he never did bring up his earlier tweet, he did make some unanalyzable remarks. Know when you're being gaslighted. The president was talking about Kim Jong-un, the North Korean dictator. He said, "I won't rule out direct talks with Kim Jong-un. I just won't. As far as the risk of dealing with a madman is concerned, that's his problem, not mine. He must be a fine man." Do you think he's a fine man? Okay, here's a twofer. Is he a madman, or is he a fine man, or is he a fine madman? You know, when you call someone a bad name, a pejorative, a demeaning name, an untrue name, they generally don't warm up to you, even if you follow it up with a nicety. In fact, this is just the gaslight game, trying to get the advantage in the deal. The truth is, the press can take a punch. We know what the truth is. But know this, some people don't care if it's a game. They will never forget it, and they will never forgive you. International diplomacy is not a parlor game, and not everything is a deal. So where is the truth? Not just the press, but all of us. We must look for authenticity, authentic source documents, the authentic truth outside the media, and not just any person or group with gaslight, and certainly not any person or group with gaslight-like behavior. So how do you do this? Wherever possible, look at original source documents. Are these your emails? Are these your bank transfers? But these are not generally available to us. So we'll go to the next level. Material produced by people who have something to lose if they got it wrong. I was once asked to forget about an unfortunate piece of documentation I had. Surprised, I said, "I'd love to forget." Only by ignoring it, I will be violating the NPR ethics and standards practices I sign, and I will surely lose my status as an NPR journalist. It's not worth it to me. Do whatever you want to me. I'm not forgetting it. I had something to lose, far greater than what I was asked to do. For my money, there's another good source that's good, and that is the information contained in a federal indictment. Information set down by prosecutors and set before a grand jury and then a judge. The penalties for putting out false information: stiff fines and imprisonment up to 5 years per count. And in the case of prosecutors, they may never be able to practice law again. The destruction of their careers and livelihood. Yeah, I like the information I get directly from federal indictments, and I ignore what is being said in the media to belittle or undermine or discount what is in them. The people who have written them have too much to lose. Also, for the purposes of our subject today about the arc of media and the future of truth, let's talk about the Mueller indictment of a dozen Russian nationals and 4+ Russian companies, including the well-known Internet Research Agency. Who here has read it? Who's read the indictment? Okay, did you read the whole thing? ACES? Okay, so we have a few people who have done that. It's important to do that. If you've heard anything in the news, you hear all kinds of things. And when I started watching the news channels, I had another Bill Clinton, Monica Lewinsky, Kevin Starr moment. These things can't all be true. Wait a minute. These are all conflicting. Some didn't even ostensibly appear. It couldn't have appeared in the indictment. So I downloaded the 37 pages and I read it. As simple as that. Didn't take long. So suspend your politics. This is not about politics. Just read it. Defendant organization, that would be the 13 Russians and the 4 companies and beyond, had a strategic goal to sow discord in the U.S. political system, including the 2016 U.S. presidential election. Defendants posted derogatory information about a number of candidates, and by early and mid 2016, defendant operations included supporting the presidential campaign of candidate Donald J. Trump and disparaging Hillary Clinton. Just think what's possible with social media. Think about this. They use social media to reach deep into American society. They organize meetups and rallies. They posed as real Americans. They did hire real Americans to build cages, pretend cages, to bring to those rallies. They hired real Americans to impersonate Hillary Clinton and get into the cages at the rallies that they organized. They incited repeatedly, lock her up, lock her up. We do remember that in emergent democracies coming out of dictatorships, frequently the person who wins the election manages to put the opposing person into jail. It's like, this is a concept we don't live with, but it is a concept coming out of other non-democracies. They put banner ads in black activist groups telling them that their vote wasn't going to matter, and they continue to pretend to be Americans. There were several missteps, but they used posts and the likes and comments and photos of real Americans. They rented space on servers in the U.S. and masked their Russian identities. They set up false visas and traveled to linchpin states collecting intelligence. They created social media pages whose titles included, on immigration, Secured Borders. On Black Lives Matter, a page called Blacktivists. On religion, they created groups as United Muslims of America and Army of Jesus. And regionally created such groups as Heart of Texas and South United. They produced materials for hashtags Trump 2016, MAGA, that's Make America Great Again, Trump Train, I Won't Protect Hillary, and Hillary for Prison. They established Twitter accounts such as March for Trump, Facebook accounts such as Clinton Fraud Nation, and Trumpsters United. The Instagram account Blacktivists read in part, choose peace and vote for Jill Stein. Trust me, it's not a wasted vote. American Muslims are boycotting elections today. Most American Muslims refuse to vote for Hillary because she wants to continue the war on Muslims in the Middle East. Starting in or around the summer of 2016, defendants and their co-conspirators all began to promote allegations of voter fraud by the Democratic Party, purchasing advertisements such as Hillary Clinton has already committed voter fraud in the Democrat Iowa caucus. Voter fraud by counting tens of thousands of ineligible mail votes for Hillary being reported in Broward County, Florida. There were political advertisements. Donald wants to defeat terrorism. Hillary wants to support it. It goes on and on. They used legitimate Social Security numbers, legitimate to real U.S. citizens who didn't know they were being used. Their real birth dates. They created bank accounts to pay for all this, bank accounts which could transfer money to PayPal, which in turn bought online social media ads. And the American citizens, they were none the wiser. They might even be you. You will read much, much more out there in simply 37 pages. Remember, these are just examples of what Robert Mueller and his team can and will prove. This is not the totality of the information which could be presented in court. This was just enough to bring charges. It doesn't matter if these people will never come here. For me, it's what they did. It's not about the politics. As an American, it makes my blood boil. Texas is ours. Being black and American is ours. Being an American evangelical Christian or an American Muslim is ours. And by the way, wall or no wall, that border is ours. It is our border, our American border, not Russia's and not anyone else's. And at the same time, we built the social media, Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and the rest. It's ours, and it's being used against us. There is much talk about how policies should change, law and regulation should change, international treaties should change. But I say to the computer science,